Hello, I'm Sally Wiener Grotta, and this is What If, Why Not, How? Where I ask people who have interesting stories and ideas questions that are on my mind. Hello. My guest today is Howard Lovy. Howard is an author, journalist, and book editor, as well as magazine editor, with 40 years of experience, covering topics ranging from nanotechnology and the auto industry to Mideast conflict and Jewish issues. His work has appeared in Publishers Weekly and Longreads and the Jerusalem Post and the Jewish Daily Foreword. Lots of good credentials. A podcast producer and host for the Alliance of Independent Authors, Howard is also the former executive editor of Foreword Reviews and is the nonfiction editor for Judith magazine. And we'll talk a little bit about Judith in a few minutes. He is the author of Found and Lost, the Jake and Cait Story. And it's a novel that's coming out this April 29th. I've been reading it, and it's a charming book. It's coming out from Vine Leaves Press, and he's currently working on another book, Outraged to Action, a practical guide to fighting anti-Semitism. He lives in northern Michigan with his wife Heidi and their dog Henry. Hi, Henry.
he's not in the room right now, but I'll let him know. Yeah.
Welcome, Howard. I'm delighted you could join us.
Well, thank you, Sally. I appreciate you having me on.
Before we start, can you tell us a little bit about your new book, Found and Lost, the Cait and Jake, or the Jake and Cait Story?
The Jake and Cait Story, yes. Well, it follows two musicians who meet as teenagers at a summer arts camp in northern Michigan, and they immediately form a romantic and musical partnership. And they almost make it big, but then some mysterious event tears them apart, and they lose touch over 40 years. Skip through time to 2025 this year, and one of their old songs accidentally goes viral. And people are wondering who these people are. So their public kind of forces them back into each other's lives in middle age. And of course, a lot of things happen in between there. And they have unresolved feelings, and they have to navigate their adult lives, including Cait is married and has a family. And the story kind of unfolds across two time periods. There's the 1985 time period and the 2025 time period. And there's also a documentary running every few chapters that's called Found and Lost, the Jake and Cait Story, about their rise to fame. So it's about many things. It explores music, faith, aging, second chances, a lot of interesting, I think, themes in there. And while you say, you said it's a charming book, and I hope it's also a fun book to read.
Yes, it is, definitely. I'd like to step back from the excitement of your new book coming out and look at your career. You've spent most of your career in nonfiction, which is something we share. Now you've written a novel.
Yeah.
Which, as you've said, was a bit of a risk. How did your nonfiction prepare you for writing Found and Lost? And what ways were you unprepared or surprised what's involved in writing fiction?
In many ways, writing nonfiction helped me really research what I'm talking about. I'm not a professional musician, but I researched enough, what professional musicians go through, how they feel about their music, not just technically how to make the music, but how they feel about the music. And I hope this novel brings that to the forefront. I ran it by professional musicians. I ran it by people who have been in the music industry, and they all say how very true to life it seems. So yeah, I'm a meticulous researcher, and that carried over into my fiction. What surprised me was the way that I guess you've heard of plotters and pantsers. In my nonfiction, I'm very much a plotter. I outline everything. I know exactly what I'm going to say. With the fiction, I know the characters. I know where I want a chapter to go, but then I just let the characters take it away. And sometimes they take you to surprising places, and that's something I'm not used to because I'm used to, in my role as a journalist, it's just the facts. But this has the basis. In fact, I wanted it to be a realistic, sort of magical story too. But these characters themselves kind of took over and told me what they wanted to do. So that surprised me.
Characters have a way of doing that. um, Found and lost. First of all, I want to ask, why found and lost and not lost and found?
Well, and first of all, that title came to me right away. There was never any temporary working title. It was as soon as I started writing it, that's what it's going to be called, and it has to do with losing things in life. It has to do with losing relationships, losing the sense of unfinished business. So it's not just that physically Jake and Cait, my two protagonists, found each other, then lost each other, I guess if I found it more, it has to do with different ways you can find and lose things as you get older. I guess that's the best explanation I can come up with. It just felt right too.
It does feel right. I would say that Found and Lost is a mystery of the heart, told from three interwoven perspectives, as you said. That of the young lovers discovering each other and making music. And then there's the older estranged man and woman who have lived very separate lives, and they're sort of connecting now. And that of a documentary filmmaker exploring who they were and wondering who they will be, or who they might be now. What I'm curious about, this is a different structure. This is not a linear structure. We're weaving these three perspectives constantly, which is something, by the way, I'm also exploring right now in a new novel. Why and how did you choose this nonlinear structure?
Maybe it's my ADD a little bit. I don't like to do only one thing. I had fun with it. I mean, first of all, and my wife and I argue about this sometimes when we watch TV programs. I like things that skip around in time. She doesn't. She likes a very linear structure. But I like, here's the situation now. But here's the backstory. Maybe it's this fascination that we have in popular culture with prequels right now. So initially the teenage years was going to be just the backstory, but they turned into interesting different characters. So I made it an important part of the whole story. Mm-hmm. And I've always been fascinated with how people change over time, and how different you can be and how the same you can be over the course of 40 years. So I wanted to establish that. It created somewhat of it was a little difficult because there were spoilers right away. Right away, that they lose each other over 40 years. So the mystery is why that happened, or that's one of the mysteries. But we know what happened. We don't know why or how it happened. And so the book kind of tells you the whys and the hows, even though you already kind of know what. Does that answer your question? I hope it does.
It does. It does. It answers that question, but it makes me wonder about a number of other questions. Did you have any difficulty with one thread of your three perspectives outweighing the others, or did you have difficulty where suddenly you've written something that happens 40 years later where they're reflecting, and now you have to go change what you've said in the documentary and in the younger years? Were you constantly balancing these, or did it flow out of you naturally? And if you were balancing them, how did you balance them?
Well, it kind of flowed out of me. What I wanted to show was change. And I think I achieved that. They're very much separate stories. The 1985 scenes, there's a whole other narrative going on from the 2025 scenes, but you can compare how they've changed. The character of Jake when he's a teenager is very impulsive, very opinionated, very critical, and quick to judge. The older character of Jake has been through a lot of life and has kind of mellowed out a little bit and is no longer as quick to judge, and knows there's a lot of gray area. The opposite happened to the Cait character, who was on a kind of spiritual quest when she was a teenager. When we meet her in middle age, she is very much firm in her beliefs and firm in her in the way she deals with other people. So I kind of, again, interested in how people change.
Yeah. And rather insightful changes. That was very real to me.
Thank you.
The intimacy of how Jake and Cait create their music is vivid with a sensual authenticity, as though it were written from personal experience, and yet you are not a musician. Please talk to us about what was the inspiration, what was involved in finding that musical voice in your writing?
Well, I guess I lied a little bit. I played clarinet in junior high school, so but that I'm not a musician myself, but the power of music has always been a part of my life. I enjoy music. I enjoy different kinds of music. When I was a child, my father was very much into classical music. I went to summer camps as a kid for music, and so I know that world, and I know the power of kind of feeling the music on the inside. It's not just about getting it right technically, but it's about feeling it. And then I transfer that to the era to the protagonist's kind of personal relationship, because I wanted to get that feeling of oneness between them. These two are from two very separate backgrounds and two very separate belief systems, but there's this one thing that they can really really be one person on, and that is music. So for me, it's not technically, it's not a book about, here are the chords you play for this song and that song. It's more about a feeling, and that creation of intimacy between them. They even look at each other in the eyes as they play, and it's I don't. There are no spoilers here, but this isn't. There aren't a lot of. There aren't any sex scenes in this. Maybe that'll turn some people off. But it's a very sensual book, in that the way these people kind of almost make love is through their music and through not just harmony, but they're kind of one person when they make their music.
Yes. Yeah. It was very reminiscent to me the first time I saw Itzhak Perlman play in person. I felt like I was actually a bit of a peeping Tom of his making love to his own violin. It was just so exquisitely personal for him. And
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I wrote a lot of this book in my head while I was running, then listening to music. So my mind went, a lot of different places. I was training for a half marathon at the time, and so I would run these long distances with nothing but music in my head, and so I'd come up with a good part of the story in my head while I was doing that. So music was always in the backdrop.
Well, it's very effective. I'd like to switch gears a little bit, because I'm very aware of Judith magazine. I was watching while it was being established by Lisa Wald, and you're now the nonfiction editor there. It's a very new literary magazine. I'd like you to tell us a bit about Judith magazine And I'm also very curious. You invest a lot of time and energy and creativity into it, and you accepted that position. I may be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, as with many literary magazines, the job is non remunerative. Um, why have you devoted so much to this little new magazine on Substack?
No, non-remunerative. That's a good way of saying no pay. So,
Yes.
yeah. Well, I have various. As you said in my introduction, I do so many different things. There are things that I do for a living, and there are things that are part of my passion. Every once in a while, the two kind of connect, and it'd be nice to make a living doing what I'm also passionate about. But a common denominator throughout my entire career has been a lifelong interest in Jewish issues. And with the rise in anti-Semitism, the last few years, not just since October 7, 2023, but as you know, it started earlier than that. It became something that I was personally prepared to chronicle in my own way because I've been studying it my whole life. And then when it hit the literary community, that's really where it got kind of personal.
Please explore that a little bit, because some of the audience may not be aware of what was happening and is happening in the publishing industry.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's very hard to be a Jewish author or Israeli author right now. There's this feeling in the industry among agents and publishers that people just don't want to hear from Jews right now, and it doesn't matter if you write about the Mideast or if you write about Israel or not. Jewish authors are being blacklisted, and there have been studies on it. I have a lot of anecdotal evidence of that. I'm working on a book about fighting anti-Semitism, and so I get a lot of people contacting me, telling me about how phone calls aren't being returned. The agents that were once enthusiastic about their project are saying, "No, now is not a good time for this." And there are various reasons behind it, and we could probably do a whole show about it. But it's a fact that's happening. So when Alyssa Wald came to me with Judith magazine, it was in the context of a lot of great, wonderful Jewish writers are being told no, and so they need a place to find home, a place where they can write about what it feels to be Jewish at this moment. During a time of increased anti-Semitism, during a time of a lot of misinformation out there about what is happening in the Middle East. It's a passion project for me. It's a little strange. I'm promoting this book, which has nothing to do with the Middle East, but it has a Jewish character. But me as a Jewish author, I kind of feel this, and I'm wondering whether people will take into account my Jewish activism if they decide whether to buy the Jake and Cait book. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I hope not. I hope it can be separate. But judging from what I hear from other authors, it's rough out there. So Judith was an attempt to say, we're here. We have literary voices. We have a lot of things we want to talk about, and it's not just about the Holocaust. It's not just about October 7. There are many ways that people need to produce their art. And I specialize as a journalist, so I took on the nonfiction role. And I've been just amazed at the quality of the essays I get of people who have something to say about this moment in history for Jews.
Yeah. And also in the fiction section, it's not just about being Jewish. It's Jewish writers who have exquisite voices that are being silenced or muted today. And so Judith is giving them a place to publish lovely short stories.
And I'm just amazed at how Alyssa has attracted just a who's who of the Jewish writing world to Judith magazine. Our subscribers just went through the roof. So there was a real need for this, and there still is.
Yeah. So I highly recommend, whether you're Jewish or not, you'll probably find some wonderful stories to read in Judith magazine. Not probably, you will. I think you will probably enjoy it very much. So, in conclusion, as an editor and a writer, do you have any advice or suggestions for writers pursuing their novel?
Just write. That's the only way. As an editor, people are telling me, some customers or potential customers say, "Well, I could just do that in ChatGPT, can't I?" No, no. There's the one thing that we have that a machine can't yet do, which is humanity, which is sitting down and writing and getting it wrong and saying, no, that's not right, balling it up and throwing it out or deleting the file, and until you get the combination of words just right. And the only way to do that is to sit down. It doesn't matter if it's 15 minutes a day or 3 hours a day. Find the time. Your life is not too busy to just find the time to write. And that's what I did with this novel. I decided, okay, at 500 words a day in X amount of time, I can get a 80,000 word novel. Mm-hmm. And I did it. Even though I'm busy at the same time trying to make a living. I've got 2 kids in college and all that. So my advice is take what you're good at and make it better by just practicing your craft. And it doesn't matter if it's if you're writing for yourself, if you're writing for your newsletter, if you're writing for social media, just write.
Excellent advice. Thank you very much. My guest today was Howard Lovy. His newest book is Found and Lost, The Jake and Cait Story, which will be published by Vine Leaves Press on April 29th. His first reading, you may be wondering why we didn't have a reading when I normally do. His first reading from the book is reserved for Vine Leaves' 3rd International Authors Reading in February 17th. It's an online reading of a handful of excellent authors, and a link to sign up for the free online event will be on the closing slide. You can connect with Howard on his website, howardlovy.com, as well as on Substack and Twitter, and of course at Judith Magazine, which is on Substack. As for me, my 2 newest books are Of Being Woman, a collection of feminist science fiction from Noble Fusion Press, and Daughters of Eve from Byte Publishing, which is an essay-based workbook and journaling guide for exploring the nature of our lives today through the stories of the women of the Hebrew Bible. My website and blog are at sallywienergrotta.com, and you can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, sometimes on Blue Sky, and hopefully on Substack soon. Too much social media for me. And hopefully you will want to be among the first to read some of my new essays, follow my escapades, find out about my appearances in books, and learn about other fascinating people I'm interviewing. To do so, please sign up on my website for my very occasional, actually rare newsletter. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Howard Lovy.
Thank you, Sally.